himself, Professor Gus John, he's just one of the greats. I'll say he's one of the gods. He may not want me to use that term. Professor Gus, can we see your beautiful face, sir? I've started your video again, brother, Professor Gus. Is it possible to turn? Oh my God, brothers and sisters, the G is with us. Professor Gus, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Oh, brother, you see, we've got over 400 people on laptops. I don't know how many on. They've come out to hear you, my brother. And can I just say, my king, my beautiful brother, I'm like a little baby in a sweet shop right now speaking to you. You are, no, I'm not even laughing, brother. You are so highly regarded in our community, brother. It's just an honor to be able to have this conversation with you, King. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. A bit hungry. I forgot to bring my popcorn, but I mean, apart from that, I'm doing well.
Oh, brother, many years ago, brother, you took us, I don't know if you remember, you took us under your wing. We were doing some work in East London. I can't remember how you heard about us, but I remember you was the, I believe it was the director of education in Hackney. Was that true?
Yes. I was there from 1989 to pretty much 1997.
And it's very rare, brother, that you see someone in your position opening the doors for a few little black brothers who are just doing some work on the street, but you recognize that, brother, and you maintained that grassroots contact with your community. And it's very rare, brother, that we see someone of your caliber still grassroots. What makes you still grassroots, sir?
My roots, basically. I was born in a very small village in the glorious island of Grenada. If you have not been yet, hurry.
Nice island.
and to two parents, my father was totally functionally illiterate, a peasant farmer, stonemason. My mother was semi-literate, ran a little grocery shop. And the teachers in my village were absolutely phenomenal. So from a very early age, I was conscious of the importance of education. I was conscious of the education that my parents had been denied. And I was conscious that having won a scholarship to go to Presentation College, one of the more prestigious schools in the island, there were many of my contemporaries in the village whose parents could not pay for them to go to secondary school. They had not won scholarships. And sadly, over the years, many of them just drunk themselves to death. The struggles that my parents were a part of, both my mother and my father, were about human liberation, basically, and ensuring that poverty did not beat people around the head. So it would be really quite ridiculous and unforgivable if, coming from that background, I had airs and graces and wanted to get gongs from the state and all that kind of rubbish.
Wow, wow, wow. And brother, I'm so happy to announce to the community, this is not going to be a one-off appearance of our Professor Gus John. There's a few other shows that we're planning with the brother in the near future. Now, Professor Gus, I know there's a particular message that you'd like to give us tonight. And so I would like to keep my mouth shut now, brother, and allow you to take us on a course of a journey that you'd like to deliver us on. And then after that, my dear King, Lady Ma'at Adele will be joining us, and she'll have that conversation with yourself. So brother, if there's anything you want to share, anything you want us to do for you, the platform is now yours, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, let me greet the Hidden Truth family. It is good that so many of you were able to join us. I know the time is advanced. I want to do a number of things, really. One, to place the Child Q event into some wider context in terms of how Black children are treated within the education system. Second, to say that we as Black people, the African diaspora, have had to endure hostile environments in our workplaces, the schools that our children go to, as we go about our lawful business on the streets and so on for decades. I came to this place in 1964, for example, and by 1965, as a student, I was having arguments with head teachers in schools in Oxford about the way Black children were being treated, particularly those who came to this country to join their parents, having been left in the Caribbean sometime before. And from then till now, that's basically been my journey, defending the education rights and the human rights of Black children, and basically working with our communities to empower themselves so that they hold schools and government to account for what our children are actually experiencing. So the point I want to make is that it's very easy to see the Child Q event as an aberration, as unusual, as something extraordinary that we need not, we shouldn't think that it actually defines the relationship between schools and our children. I would like to differ from that, because we have over the years so many experiences of the state not taking seriously its responsibility towards our children. What do I mean by that? If you've been going around the world without anybody's permission, enslaving people, colonizing them, robbing their lands, raping their women, destroying their spiritual traditions, and all the rest of it, you can't then begin to behave as if you stand on the moral high ground. Morality was made in Britain. Goodness abides in schools, and it is those foreigners, those people whom you consider to be other, who are responsible for what is actually taking place. In other words, the assumption is, if we were not here, there won't be those kinds of problems. But the fact of the matter is that England, white Britain, has been in need of repair long before we came here, particularly those of us who came after the Second World War. But that's never been accepted. It's never been accepted that if you do brutal things to people and you dehumanize them, you are effectively dehumanizing yourself, because not even animals treat one another in those kinds of ways.
Come on, Professor Gus. Okay. Come on, King.
So therefore, if that is the background, then you should stop pretending that Britain was a very homogeneous, well-ordered society before we came here. There were working class people dying in the satanic mills, dying in the mines, white working class people. There were children going up chimneys, barbaric practices which defined Britain. So this notion that we came, we were responsible for the diversity within Britain is complete rubbish. You had a diversity on the axis of class, you had a diversity on the axis of religion, on the axis of disability, and gender and sexuality and all of that stuff. So that process of rendering us other and not normal, calling us non-white, as if white is some kind of a norm, and if you're not white, then you don't qualify. It's all part of a racist culture that nobody in government, nobody in leadership positions in the society wanted to confront. And therefore, for our own survival, and in order to affirm our own humanity, we needed to do all the things that we did, struggling against racism on the streets, struggling against the neo-fascism that was assaulting us in our communities, and what have you. So the same police who were supposed to be defending us as we went about our business used to talk openly about going nigger hunting. Well, now, how can we be in a situation where you could forget that that is happening on the one hand and talk nonsense about policing by consent and what have you, when police officers are running around the streets, harassing young children, criminalizing them at a very young age, and behaving as if we are the problem within the society? Okay, so what does all of that have to do with Child Q? What it has to do with Child Q is this. Over time, over many decades, Black young people came to have a particular profile within the society imposed by white Britain, which predisposed the institutions of the state to treat them in a particular manner. Schools, magistrates and judges, the whole criminal justice system, harsher penalties in schools for Black young people than whites, harsher sentences in courts for Black young people and Black adults than whites. And so at every turn in the society, we pay an ethnic penalty just for being. Okay, so we've got to take all of that into account when we then begin to find out how it was that the police could treat a young child like they did Child Q. And the reason is that over the years, the government itself has given permission to schools to act in those kinds of ways, based upon their definition of us. So when the police go around the streets doing stop and search, as far as they're concerned, every young Black person is a potential criminal. They're not differentiating between this particular group or that particular group. They're not, their behavior is not intelligence-led as they would like us to believe. So my young nephew, a university student at a Russell Group University, high performer, comes home for holidays, and he walks down his streets here in London and gets stopped 9 times in a week. 9 times in 1 week. And I mean, he, towards the end of the week, he was getting so fed up that he was going to bash a policeman to death if he could. But he had to exercise restraint because they were ready to use the tasers and all kinds of weapons that were going to kill him. Okay, so it is the way in which children have been, Black children in particular, have been seen by the state, and the way in which schools have been empowered by government to treat them on the grounds that they've got to impose discipline, they've got to raise standards, and what have you. Now, it is stupid for anybody to suggest in that context that what happened to Child Q had anything to do with adultification. That's a complete nonsense. Adultification is a red herring as large as a salmon. You can't get into a situation like that. A child is in school writing an exam. At her age, it would have been abnormal for her not to be menstruating. There are children who are menstruating before they leave primary school, in years 5 and 6, before they even get into the first year of secondary school. And the question is, what does adultification have to do with that? so even if, okay, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child says that a child is a child until they reach 18 years of age. That child wasn't 18. She wasn't even in a sixth form, right? So how can you suggest that the police may have thought she was older than she is? There is no way one could excuse the visceral racism of the police by suggesting that somehow they made a mistake. What they did was barbaric. And it would have been barbaric if the child was 45 rather than 15. So let's not get it twisted. And this adultification thing has taken on a momentum to the extent that there are people now going around running courses on adultification. It's become the new market trade as unconscious bias. And it is total and utter nonsense. Now, the police were in that school because the teachers called them. The Safer Schools officer, police officer, who would normally have been there, was absent because of COVID or whatever. And he advised the school to call the police. They went there, and the school, the teachers, simply handed over their authority to the police, forgetting that they've got a safeguarding duty towards that child. So they just handed her over to the police, and they weren't even in the room to see what the police were actually doing to her. Well, now, none of us sends our children to school to be criminalized, and no school should make children feel vulnerable. And that's the reality for too many children in schools. I've been dealing with this stuff since, as I said, since 1965. My grandchildren now are going through the same damn thing that I was struggling with in the middle to late 1960s. So let us get it clear. It had nothing to do with adultification. And because of the mindset of the schools, they did not use the common sense. That child, even if she was smelling of cannabis, even if, why should the conclusion be, A, that she's smoking it, and B, that she might have it hidden in her body, in the interior of her body, to sell, and she's hiding it to avoid detection. I mean, what barbaric nonsense is that? And even if they had concerns about her having cannabis, she was doing an exam. Teachers were supervising her. The school had every opportunity to call her parents and say, we have a concern. We would like you to come down to school so we can have a conversation after the child finishes her exam. She wasn't going to set up a stall to sell weed in the middle of the school. So my point is that in the manner in which she was abused, pretty much raped by the police in that room, traumatized, the school. If I was still the director of education in Hackney, I kid you not, I would have marched down to that place, chucked out the head teacher, have him arrested.
Woo!
Chucked out the teachers who were involved and handed over the child to the police, have them arrested.
Professor Gus.
I would have dealt with the lawyers and the teaching unions subsequently. That horrendous act against that child that would mark her for life.
Come on.
Not be seen as simply, some mistake on the part of the school. It's completely ridiculous.
Come on.
Okay, so what if she came from a household where people routinely smoke weed? And by the way, that doesn't just happen in Black households. It happens more in white households in this country than in black. The police won't tell us that, but there are more white people routinely smoking weed in front of their children than black people. What if she had been on the bus sitting on the upper deck and people were smoking weed, which happens again pretty regularly, especially in inner London? So it is the mindset which got those teachers to believe that they needed to involve the police because she was a black child from a working class background. If she were from the Beauvoir village or some other upmarket part of Hackney and she was white, they wouldn't have done that. I'm absolutely sure they wouldn't have done that. So it's racism and brutality mixed into one. Now, the question that raises is, how do we ensure, if we've got to send our children into these hostile environments because we don't all homeschool them, how do we ensure that those environments are safe for our children? We can do so only by ensuring that we take some responsibility, as you do in the East Side and West London Academy. And I mean, I was singularly impressed with what Brother Mark Mohammed shared in that respect, and the images that you shared with us. It is phenomenal, and I mean, never mind Destiny's stellar achievements, but we didn't simply sit back and let the schools do what they wanted. We in this conversation would know that we built a supplementary school movement. In 1965, in church halls along Cowley Road in Oxford, I was working with children after school in the evening and on Saturdays. We didn't call it a Saturday school at that time, but those children needed that support, not only so that they could do better in their schooling, but we needed to put them together again because of psychologically, spiritually, because of what they were experiencing in those schools on a day-to-day basis. People calling them names, teachers not understanding them, teachers believing that because they spoke Jamaican English, they were imbeciles. So their self-esteem was being dented phenomenally every single day. And we had a responsibility to engage with that and put those children together again, coming out of those hostile environments. That grew into the supplementary school and Saturday school that we started even before I left Oxford. So my point is, we didn't sit back and do nothing. We built a supplementary school movement. John LaRose started New Beacon Books. Jessica and Eric Huntley started Bogle Louverture Publications. And those publishing houses played a major part in our resistance to what was going on in schools and in rescuing our children. Brother Mark said it eloquently a while ago. It's not just about passing exams and getting those stellar grades that Destiny got. It's also about the rounded development of children, spiritually, psychologically, culturally, so that they are in balance with themselves, in balance with the environment around them, and with the confidence to go and be what they want to be. How do you handle conflict? How do you manage your own anger? How do you begin to solve problems in a manner that suggests you are capable of critical thinking? All of those things we did routinely. You showed the open day or whatever it was in the academy. We used to have those kinds of events practically every Saturday in some part of London or Manchester or Birmingham or whatever, where we had open days for children in supplementary schools. Sadly, When Ofsted came in and every school was concerned about exam results as the only test of children's development and ability, most of those supplementary schools changed tack. For one thing, the teachers, even the Black teachers, started wanting to be paid rather than volunteering. When I started a supplementary school in Handsworth in Birmingham in the late 1960s with Brother Beanie Brown and Morris Andrews, father of Kahinda Andrews and so on, we worked there ourselves, but we had a whole army of students from sixth forms or from Birmingham University coming down to Handsworth to work with those with children in those schools. And we were very concerned about what was happening to them in those hostile white spaces. We had to introduce them to the fact that knowledge doesn't only come in a white package. We had to introduce them to books written by Black people who are still alive, sometimes within their own communities. One of the most rewarding periods of my life was when I used to work with Eric and Jessica Huntley, or with John LaRose, and you'd have authors coming in there to read their work, to speak to children. Sam Selvin, Andrew Salke, George Lamming, whoever. Some lived in Britain, some were passing through. But it was an amazing experience for those children to have Black writers sitting in front of them on the floor, reading and talking about their work and about their life and about how difficult it is to get some of the work published. Now, what you represent in the work that you do in East London and South London is, if you like, a very well-honed development of that whole supplementary school project. And the focus is not only on academic development, but on the rounded development of children. So my wish is this. Let me give you one more story. In 1999, a couple of years after I left that job in Hackney as Director of Education, with a man called Jerry German, he used to be the principal education officer at the Commission for Racial Equality, and a couple more others, we started an organization called the Communities Empowerment Network. Most people would know it as CEN. Why did we do that? We did that because we were conscious. I experienced in Hackney that one secondary school in that borough was excluding 60% of all the permanent exclusions in the borough. And we had to call them to account. How is that possible? Especially as most of those children were Black, okay? Jerry German, for his own part, were experiencing at the CRE, parents, community groups coming there and saying, we want an investigation done because this is what's happening to children in this particular school. We determined that we would set up this organization called the Communities Empowerment Network with a focus almost exclusively on giving support to excluded students, those who were at risk of exclusion, and their parents. And in the first couple of years, we were dealing with practically 1,000 exclusions every single year. The organization is still going. I am its current chair after, God knows, do the maths, between 1999 and now. The point I want to make about that is this. In spite of the fact that we've dealt with so many exclusion cases every year, we have not been able to fulfill our goal, which was to enable those parents whose children were being, in many cases, illegally excluded, and others who had concerns about the school's attitude towards curriculum, towards the work that children were doing in the supplementary schools and so on, to empower parents with the information, the knowledge, and the skills to hold these institutions to account. We thought that through that work, we would be building a movement of parents, right? Sadly, as time went on, most parents were totally content with having their individual child's case dealt with. The child was either got back into school or help them to move to another school or whatever. And the parents were less interested in coming together and empowering themselves so that in Hackney, in Hammersmith, in Ealing, whatever, there could be a group of parents with those skills and with that experience who could then come together and be active in not only resisting what's going on in schools, but influencing government policy and making sure that no government, we've had some total dunderheads as education secretaries in my time in this country.
Say that one more time, brother. Say that one more time.
I mean, seriously. And to think that some of them had the power and authority to tell schools what to do, and particularly to tell schools what to do with our children. It is unbelievable. You know, that's one of the, in my view, one of the downsides of this whole democratic participation business. Nobody should have to suffer a Michael Gove or a Priti Patel or a Kemi Badenoch. Nobody. Okay, so my point is this, that we have a duty as communities to empower ourselves. It is absolutely essential that the way in which our children experience schooling is shared amongst them as students, and indeed with parents, their parents and their friends' parents. We all know that when a child, 5 years old, 7 years old, having a birthday, there are a whole heap of children that come around. We invite them. They are the friends. They see them every day in school. They form relationships, some better with others, some better with some than others, and so on. And they come. And we do a spread. We make sure that all the children are fine and so on. Why can't that be extended so that the same people who are coming together for these birthday parties or whatever come together to discuss the children's schooling experience, come together to support one another in terms of their partnership in their children's learning? Why have we got to adopt this totally individualistic approach to how we deal with matters? So what matters is the school that my child goes to. I want it to be the best, and even if it means I have to do 5 jobs in order to buy a house in that area where Ofsted tells me the school is outstanding, I'm going to do that. And once I've done that, job done. We have to change our mindset, because I'm going to wrap up in a minute. We have to change our mindset, because our children are not just suffering, they're killing one another. Yeah. And what is so inspiring about the work that you guys do is that the grounding you give those young people, so that they have a sense of self, a sense of their own history, a sense of their interdependence one upon another, means that the chances that they themselves would be inclined to go out there and stick a knife into somebody less than 6 feet from them would be remote. We've got to take responsibility to build those kinds of institutions and empower ourselves such that there needs to be a national organization of Black students. There needs to be a national organization of Black parents. We started the Black Parents Movement in 1975 at the Cascade Center in London, and it went on to do some great things way into the 1990s. Yeah, if we don't take stock and empower ourselves, mobilize and believe that by taking collective action we could bring about change, that lot, especially that right-wing lot who just going into down the street, they would have us for supper, I promise you.
Supper.
Enough.
Supper. Brothers and sisters, please, if you felt our king, Professor, that's why you see I'm like a little child in a sweet shop. I can listen to this brother all day, every day. Professor Gus, I don't mean to embarrass you in any way, brother, but I want to say in front of all, thank you, brother Mark. I want to say in front of all of these people, brother, I love you so much. And I hope that doesn't embarrass you, brother, because, brother, the stories and the life skills, and especially when you go into the history, oh, brother, I'm like a little child. I just want to be at your feet, brother. And it's just pure love. And brother, it's something that we've not announced on the program yet. But brothers and sisters, Professor Gus talked about we need a national organization of young people, and especially the parents, not just worried about my child goes to the top school, but empowering themselves. And that the spirit of Ubuntu, you are because we are, and we are because you are. Your soul belongs to me as my soul belongs to you, man. And Professor Gus, you know, brothers and sisters, I'm not launching it tonight, but Sister Samira, before we bring on Lady Adele, Sister Samira, are you there? I know your back's in trouble. I don't know if Sister Samira is available, but Professor Gus, you know, on this platform, we're not just about talking, and you know, we've been running the supplementary schools, but it's now to organize our parents. And brothers and sisters, very soon, very, very, very soon, we're going to put a call out to all of you Black parents or parents of Black children. So even if you're white, English, but you got a Black child, we want to work with you. And we're going to be putting together an organization of Black parents all over the UK that we can respond in one voice and stand up as one. And so, brothers and sisters, as I said, this platform, we ain't interested in just having a Tuesday meeting so we can sound good. Behind the scenes, we are working. And Professor Gus gave us some marching orders just then. And believe it or not, we are listening to Professor Gus, and we're going to be acting on it. So in the next few weeks, we're going to put a call out to all of you to join on to our national voice that we can speak as well. And we'll have people like Professor Gus backing us, speaking to us, advising us, guiding us, because you know, he's one of the dons in this area. Professor Gus, we thank you so much. Lady Ma'at, we're running very good on time. Lady Ma'at, are you there?
I am, Brother Andrew. Good evening, Dr. Gus John, one of my heroes. It's the first time I think we'll be having a conversation. That's fantastic.
Good to see you.
Lady Adele, just before you start, brothers and sisters, Lady Adele's in the house. Make some noise. But before you start, Lady Adele, for those of you that just heard from our great brother, Professor Gus, you want to look more into this brother's teachings and into this brother's work. We're promoting tonight 4 of his books that we're saying, come on, man, we need these resources. Black parents or parents of Black children, get these books tonight. Brother Jamie, Sister Samira, Sister Jarita, put the links on for Professor Gus. But the first book we're promoting is Emancipate Yourself, Choose Life by Professor Gus. Yeah, we're talking about literally murder in the playground. These are books and works of Professor Gus. Get a screenshot or go online and get these books. These are ones what we say are fundamentally important. Every house should have one of these books. We're talking about the case of a learner's charters for schools. Again, Professor Gus, this man's a don. I don't understand if you understand the kind of man we're listening to tonight. We are talking about taking a stand by Professor Gus John. You heard the man yourself. We're planning for the brother to be on several shows with us on The Hidden Truth. But these are the books we're saying that if you love yourself, if you love Black children, and you love to empower our community, these are the books we're saying tonight, go and purchase. Because as the brother just stated, if we're gonna be skipping through the tulips today, this government that's in power now will have us for supper. They wouldn't even know we exist. They won't even know that we're here. It would be easy killings. So brothers and sisters, that's what I really wanted to say. Get these books. We're going to promote it on our mail out list after tonight too. Sister Lady Ma'at, please take us on a journey with Professor Gus.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Evening, family. It's lovely to be with you all again today. Professor Gus, it's wonderful to be with you. And just to say, family, that when I did leave London, when I was about 8 or 9, I actually moved to Oxford, Professor John, but that would have been in the 70s. And I know exactly the levels of racism that was there. And even myself as a mixed race person who lived with a Black parent, who had good English, my mum was a nurse, I was still considered stage 5 on the EAL register purely because I had a Black parent. And that made no sense to me. And you were on stage 1, you know, if you spoke a foreign language, and you were on stage 2 on 1 if they couldn't understand your accent. So I know the hard work you would have had to put up with there in Oxford.
Thank you.
So Brother Gus, I've got 6 questions. Some of them will have long answers, some of them will have short answers. And I'm really thinking about the family that we've got on the platform today. Myself, I'm an educationist for the last 30 years. I've been through the schooling system since childhood right through to now. So my first question, Doctor, is that you spoke about the adultification being a red herring when it came to child Q. Can I ask the question, because we're going to hear this word more and more often, is there any place where we as a Black community should be accepting the term adultification as it links to our children?
I would say not. You will know that for some decades, we, at least some of us in the Black community, have been concerned about what I call the early sexualization of our children, particularly girls. Yeah. In other words, encouraging them to dress in a manner that basically sexualize them. 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds with all sorts of stuff on the bodies and so on and so forth. In other words, putting out messages that for them to be considered pretty, they had to do all those sorts of things, right? Now, that is a different concern, it seems to me, than the concept of adultification. And I think people tend to get all of that mixed up. As I was saying in my remarks, it's customary now for young girls to reach puberty long before 15 or 16 or whatever. Children become prepubescent in primary schools, as I said. Now, that doesn't mean that every pedophile in the land should target them, or that police should consider that they could have some voyeuristic interest in them to the extent that at the slightest opportunity they make them strip. Now let us remember, when we talk about adultification, what happened to child Q was not that peculiar in terms of how the police conduct themselves. We know, and there have been reports about it, the kinds of things that they say to one another on WhatsApp messages and so on and so forth. We know how utterly detestable the conduct was in relation to the Smallman sisters with whom they took selfies, etc., when the family were grieving about A, their death, and B, the police's own actions in relation to their deaths. We know all of that. So let us abandon this notion that somehow or other it's not possible for police to have those kinds of proclivities. It is very possible, and that's why I'm saying we need to ensure that our children are safeguarded in those environments. We are compelled by law to send our children to school. If we don't, they cart us off to some court or something. And therefore, it is essential that the schools demonstrate that they're providing a safe environment for children to be in. And that means that whether it is boys who are harassing them sexually, whether it is some of our boys, black boys, making their lives miserable because they think they're too black or their lips are too big or they're too ugly or whatever, all that kind of rubbish goes on routinely. And it's got to be addressed. And we've got to address it within our communities, because, you know, I was saying to Brother Andrew, one of the things that always frustrates me is that we are very, very good at speaking truth to power, right? And justifiably so. And I put my hand up as one of those who always kicking the ass of power, right? But we are not very good at speaking the truth to ourselves. And we have to make the space to do that and deal with those difficult issues. Colorism amongst our children, the extent of sexual abuse that's going on between our black boys and young girls, the growing tendency within the society, even amongst our children, to be obsessed with porn and believe that that is somehow or other a yardstick for the kinds of relationships they should have with women. We have to address those issues, but we should always deny and certainly make sure that nobody brings this nonsense about adultification to the way our children are dealt with, especially by people in authority.
So I guess to sum up the answer to that, family, on a just from day to day, is that term adultification is put upon us and then it is used against us.
Exactly.
So it's not a real world word for us in our community. We're going to hear it more and more often, but always remember when we hear it that it's put upon us and then it's used against us. So, Doctor, I'm going to ask you my second question now. Is that you spoke? Sorry, sir.
I'm quite happy with Gus. You know.
Okay,
you could lose the doctor and professor and all of that kind of stuff. Just Gus.
So Gus, my second question, we spoke about parents, the empowerment of parents and parents when you started the movement, the CEN movement, and you wanted it to grow and to develop, but parents started to move around just being concerned about themselves and
Yes.
their own children. So this is a bit of a two-part question. How do we change that and empower the parents to really rise up to support each other and ourselves as a community? And is one way of doing that to bring back the London schools and the Black child, maybe not in the same format, but in another format? Because I remember attending those and we had parents, young people and teachers all coming together and moving forward. And that seemed to work very well. I was very young in the profession at that time.
Yeah.
Is that a way to start moving our parents collectively and our grandparents, those of us who are now dealing with our grandchildren, to drive organizations like the CEN to really look out for all of our children?
Two important questions. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is that parents are not a homogeneous group. Yeah, there are some people who are considerably better at parenting and more confident about parenting than others. There are others who have good intentions, but do the wrong things in terms of supporting their children's development. We need to be able to come clean about those sorts of things. I believe in the power of working in small groups, small units. Your child has got 5 friends. They might have 5 parents or 10, but engaging with them is quite important. You know, if children come round to my house, I used to say to my grandchildren, don't come and tell me nothing about sleepover if I don't know the color of the door that you're going into to sleep. Never mind what is inside the house. Yeah, we have to take some responsibility for how our children see themselves and interact with others. So if the people that they're interacting with have got some values or whatever, which I consider to be not in the interest of my child, then the child ain't going there. People have a right to be what they are or do what they want in their homes. It doesn't mean that my child has got to go and join that nonsense. Okay, so what I'm saying is, it is very important, especially in relation to individual schools, that we talk to our children. We need to have more intergenerational conversations. So we speak to our children about their schooling experience. We demonstrate to them that we are interested in what's happening to them and what they're doing and so on. We can't leave it to the school, and too many of us do that. So it's really a matter of beginning that practice of communing with one another, sharing information, not being afraid to say that I don't know or I need help. Because some of us have got a kind of false pride which suggests that, you know, we don't want this person to know this, that, and the next thing. I could understand it from some points of view, but when it comes to supporting our children and knowing that they could be exposed to all kinds of stuff over which we don't have any control, then that's another matter. You know, I always find it fascinating when a child gets stabbed in a very odd kind of set of circumstances, and everybody comes out and they're pouring, you know, sweet oil, as they used to say at home, on the whole thing. And everybody is, you know, the child, best child, blah, 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 blah. I'm not doubting any of that. But my point is that we do not scrutinize enough the company our children keep. My parents used to say, tell me, show me the company you keep, and I'll tell you who you are. And to a large extent, that's true. But we have a responsibility not just to take our children away from that company and say, thank God you're not like other kids. They should all be considered our kids. That's the point. Yeah, all of those children, good, bad, and indifferent, should be considered our children, and they should be at the center of our concern as much as our own children. Because we can't lock our children up in our homes. They go out. And after a certain age, they do all kinds of stuff while they're out. But we need to be able to ensure that when they go out there, they have the equipment, the skills to manage themselves in situations where there is peer group pressure or children want to do this, that, or the next thing, which they know they themselves should have no part of. So when we operate in those kinds of ways, we encourage children to form, if you like, their own groups and have sensible conversations. We have those conversations ourselves. And if you expand that within any one particular borough or any one particular city, then you've got a solid group of people coming together. Coming to the business about London schools and the Black child, that was a very important initiative. It started off just as I was leaving Hackney, Diana, but MP for Stoke Newington or whatever, she started Hackney Schools and the Black Child. And that conference used to happen in the assembly halls in Hackney Town Hall. When Ken Livingstone became the mayor of London, she extended that with his support, financial support, and it became London Schools and the Black Child, which was not an accurate name because of the 2,500 people who came to that conference every year. I would imagine about 50% came from outside of London, right? So what was the value of that? It brought people together. We were able to share an analysis of what was going on in schooling and what have you. Black teachers were able to say how they were experiencing their own schools and so on. But the problem is we went back there year after year after year, and there were no resolutions coming from the conference. We were not saying to government, we want you to do X, Y, Z. We were having some meaningful conversations and feeling good in the pit of our stomachs when we left. But in terms of building a movement, that was not what that was about. And I see that as a wasted opportunity. If you get 2,500 parents coming every year to London to discuss education matters, and you end up 10, 12 years later, not having a body of people from around the nation who having done all of that grounding and conversations with one another, have got a common purpose, a vision of what could be, and the power to influence what government does, then I consider it to be wasteful. And I would not like to see a repeat of that.
Thank you very much for that, Gus. So just looking at that first question, it's that thing about talking to our children and not at our children. And I think what you've said about our children, knowing our children's friends, some of the friends may be questionable, but the mere fact we as the adults know them and maybe invite us to home, we are in a position where we can influence them and maybe support them in ways that we don't recognize, engage with their own family. So even where children maybe at a disadvantage, we're in a position where we can support with that, even without knowing it. So I do think that's really important for us, because we do it a lot when our children are at primary school. We always meet up for the birth together. We should continue that into secondary school, because that's when we see our children starting to fall backwards. And just to sum up what you've just said about bodies like the London School and the Black Child, if we're going to set up something collective like that, it must be with an outcome purpose and be driven to that, and not just be a talking shop, because you're right, we go over and over again and nothing else gets done, and we look back and say nothing has changed. That's my next question. Is a bit of a controversial one. So we have today a lot of mixed race children between African and white, or Caribbean and white children. So we have a lot of these, a lot of mixed race children who are identified by society as Black. And I found in my experience that they struggle with their identity in school, because often they live with a white parent, often in a white family environment, often where sometimes that white environment is racially abusive against Black people in general, which includes that child themselves. And we also have the situation where some of the white parents don't really know how to manage this situation and to deal with the fact that I've got a Black child, but I'm alien to that world, but yet I can see, or I can't see, what is happening to my child. What can you say about that, or how can we look at that, or how can we work to support those sets of people who are hard to reach, because we often think of ourselves as a closed all Black community?
Well, my position on that isn't a very popular one.
Okay.
But I believe it to be sensible. You wouldn't be surprised to hear me say that. What do I mean? I believe that one has got to put the child always at the center of one's concerns, okay? And demand that everybody else does that. Schools, the police, whoever. And that means that one needs to equip both parents with the confidence and the knowledge and the information to be able to support that child and know when to defend them against racism or any other form of oppression. It means, therefore, that if a child has got a white parent, that parent needs to be assisted, particularly given all the other things I've said before about the society and its sense of white superiority and what have you, need to be assisted in understanding racism and the racism that would be directed at their children. It doesn't really matter what their disposition is. There are some white parents who believe that it's wrong for their black partners or the black partners' relatives or whatever to be claiming that child for the black community. People have told me that to my face. And what I say to them is, you might feel that you are entitled to have that child choose to be more a part of your white family. But when they go out there, the police, the National Front, all those kinds of people aren't interested in whether they identify with the white family or not. They see them as black, and they treat them as black. We know from evidence that in addition to black boys being the most excluded and what have you, mixed heritage children, particularly those with one Caribbean parent, right? It's not the same for children with one Indian parent or one Chinese parent or whatever. But children of the African diaspora in that sense, they're treated much more harshly, and they are excluded from schools much more than anybody else. So it means, therefore, that there has to be a concern about how to support those children in forming their own identity and in dealing with all the racism that gets thrown at them routinely as they go about their daily business. So white parents must be able to do that, especially if the white parent is left on, or not left on her own, is on her own with a black child. And so I am never in favor of the argument which says this is, a black family business, and therefore we do not want white people in the room. If we take that attitude towards everything that we do, then we're denying that child the capacity or the right to have someone informed assisting their development. That someone being the white parent. And again, that's a conversation that we don't have enough. But it's very important, I think, that we invest in parents' development. And that means investing in the development of white parents of black children.
Thank you very much, because I know that's a very difficult one and it's a very controversial one, but that's a whole generations of children who are identified by society and may identify themselves as black, and how that they navigate their way through society, often on their own because of that conflict that the parent may have. So thank you very much for that, Gus. I'm going to go back to something you said early on when you started your talk today, and you talked about us as a body of people not being welcome back in the 60s. Do you think that we are welcome now, or do you think we're still, as a group of people, not welcomed, or we're not understood, or the white community doesn't really understand how to manage or what to do with us as a people. So it's about that statement you made about being welcome back then. Where do we stand now regarding being welcomed into English, or if you want to term it, British society?
Well, I think many of us have become complacent, and more than complacent, many of us are delusional about our positioning in the society. I don't want to go into it in any detail, but that is what that nonsense with Charles editing the Voice last week was about. Totally delusional for you to think that somehow or other, by having the next monarch to be edit a paper that is all right. It's just completely stupid. And it doesn't matter how many CBs or baronesses or whatever it is this place generates. They become totally irrelevant in the context of Black struggle and Black resistance to oppression. So what am I saying? I am saying that until such time that the society accepts that it has got to expunge racism from its very DNA, we would always be considered the other. We would always be considered people who have got a different set of rights than others. And some people believe that I want to be a head teacher. I don't want to be a Black head teacher. Don't burden me with the responsibility of Blackness so that people have expectations of me because I'm Black. There are people who would love to live their lives without having to bother about those things. But the society does not let us do that. Yeah. And if we see ourselves as identifying with white Britain in that kind of way, then we become complicit in all the nonsense that white Britain heaps upon us. That's the point. We become complicit. And therefore, it's a question of fighting for equity. It's a question of struggling so that every Black person can walk the streets without fear of being targeted, whether it be by the police, by racists, or whoever else, people in shops or whatever. It's a constant struggle. You know, I have been doing this stuff since I was 19. I shall soon be 78. And it's horrendous, you know? So we have got to be realistic about our position within the society. The society has not changed in terms of coming to terms with its own racism, its own racist and colonial and imperialist history, and what therefore that must mean. So schools, in my view, I mean, you have more experience of this now than I do, but schools are not equipping children, British children, white and Black, with the skills they need, the knowledge and information they need to shape the society that they are going to inherit. That's not what those places are about. Yeah. And you know, I fear. Brother Andrew was talking about Liz Truss and all of that business. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if before very long, she or whoever she appoints as education secretary or whatever determines that the word racism should not be used in schools anymore because it promotes woke culture or culture wars or whatever it is. I wouldn't be a bit surprised because in everything that, especially the government since 2010 has done, has been to neutralize any attempt whatsoever to get institutions to take responsibility for dealing with racism. You know, the Race Relations Amendment Act doesn't mean very much to institutions these days. The the Equality and Human Rights Commission doesn't go after them if they are not complying with the public sector equality duty. And so it's a general free-for-all. And then when you start talking about structural racism, systemic racism, and critical race theory, etc., Kemi Badenoch comes in and says, this should not be allowed, it should be outlawed in schools and what have you. So we have a fight on our hands. And we what's the word? We enable and allow governments to intrude too much into our struggles rather than basically holding the feet to the fire and making them understand that we have a right to our human rights and we have a right to defense of our fundamental entitlements as a people in the society.
Gus, thank you so much for that, about that delusion. So even where we feel welcome, where our egos are stroked, we must always be mindful that as long as racism exists as it does in its so many different forms, that you cannot be truly welcome. And so we must remember that no matter how high we go up the system, that there is an issue with colour always along the way. So thank you very much for that. And I've got one last question, Gus. I know as a young educator, I had to read Taking a Stand. It was recommended. I know lots of teachers from back in the day have read that book in particular of all your books. Looking at that book now and looking at society today, do you still see that that book is relevant for where we find ourselves in British society today, almost 15 coming up probably to 20 years later?
Yes, I mean, I think it is because the issues that we were dealing with haven't gone away. And I don't know that people's understanding of them has deepened particularly much. What gives me hope really is that more and more young people are having some quite rich conversations about themselves, about the society. They are using their creativity, whether it be in terms of writing, music, poetry, whatever, in a manner that speaks to their experiences. And I think more and more of that has got to be encouraged. Having said that, however, I stress the importance of intergenerational dialogue and cross-generational activism, because I believe that it is important that students or young people know that journey that people like me made between the middle 1960s and now. It is important that they can put something like the New Cross Massacre in 1981 into context.
Yeah.
It's important that they understand that it isn't, never mind Baroness Lawrence, it isn't just Stephen Lawrence who was murdered by racists. There are many other people, including many of those who died in police custody. So we might not call those racist murders, but effectively that's what many of them are.
Yeah.
Right? So the state decided to canonize Doreen Lawrence, in spite of the fact that the police were responsible in the first place for the murderers of her son going free. And when she was trying to gain justice for him, I and others were part of that Stephen Lawrence campaign. We used to meet in places in Camden and plan stuff. Yeah, they infiltrated the campaign, the police, and they were spying on Doreen and Neville Lawrence to see what dirt they could get to embarrass them, shame them, belittle them or whatever else it may be. Barbaric. They'd lost their child. The police had colluded with the murderers, for God's sake. And then they go in there and try and do that. So how that noble baroness, after all of that, could have gone and been swept up by the establishment in the way that she was, I shall never understand. But it's a question of personal choice, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a matter for her. The point I'm making is that that represents something as far as the state is concerned.
Yes.
And the fact that they very rarely talk about Anthony Walker, who had an axe put through his head in Liverpool, and all that gave rise to, and all of those kids dying on the streets. Yeah, our children killing one another. So the society is manipulative. It manipulates situations. It buys off people, and it has them do its own bidding. I mean, I think that whole business about the Prince and the Voice last week is very fascinating for a whole number of reasons, right? And I suppose, you know, a gathering of CBEs and OBEs and all of those other damn BEs.
Mm-hmm. So, Gus, thank you very much for that. And so what Gus is saying there, and I've only read Taking a Stand, is that as we read books and sometimes we look at the dates and think, are they still relevant today? Our history and our culture and our experience as Black people within Britain, in that intergenerational conversation that you were talking about, that we need to be having, so things are understood. So what society might brush under the carpet now, we still keep alive, and our young people can then put it all into context and see how books that were written some time back still fit into the society today and still has shaped them as young people today, make them very important and critical reading. So so please.
There's a sequel coming to that, by the way.
Oh, fantastic. When is
Second volume, still taking a stand, yes.
Okay. Any release date on that?
Hopefully before the end of the year, if the publishers could get their act together.
And it's going to be called Taking a Stand too, so we can just look out for that title.
Yes, roughly.
Roughly that.
I might call it something a bit more naughty, but I mean, it depends.
So, Professor Gus John, I would say thank you very much for what you've shared with us today, for answering all my questions. I'm so glad that this session is recorded, because I didn't want to be rudely scribbling down notes. I can do that at a later point of time. But there are some key messages that you've said that we can pull out of that, and key messages that leads us to take an action in whichever role we are, as a parent, as a teacher. We can use and apply in our daily lives. We just need to get up and start acting, and not just sit back and absorb what we've heard, but use it to make a difference. So thank you very much, Gus. I look forward to when you come back on, Brother Andrew, when the book comes out.
Come on.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
In fact, I'm going to order all the other ones now, Gus. I didn't know there were more. So once you're talking to Andrew, on Amazon straight away.
Thank you so much, Adele. Great talking with you.
And you, sir. Thank you.
Professor Gus, you came, you saw, and you conquered, brother. No, I'm not joking, brother. No, I love to see you smile and laugh, but brother, oh my God, we've been waiting for months for you to come on the platform. And brother, you came, you saw, and you conquered. Brothers and sisters, there's one mistake you made though, Professor Gus, which I think I need to correct you on with due humility. You said that you're approaching 78. No, tell me I'm sure you made a mistake there, brother. Or maybe I didn't do that correctly.
Well, that's very kind of you.
I'm not saying it to be kind. Did you mean that?
Yes.
Oh my God, brothers and sisters, Professor Gus. Oh my God, you are an advert to all of us, brother, on so many realms. Brothers and sisters, this was Professor Gus John. Please, look, before the brother goes, before we end up, we're going to be doing some little bits and pieces before we end the show. Brothers and sisters, what city are you tuning in from right now? I want to let Professor Gus know the range of the people that he's been speaking. We've got London in the house, brother, Professor Gus. Hertfordshire. We've got Bromley South. We've got Streatham. We've got Ipswich. We've got Essex. We've got Wellingborough. We've got Enfield. We've got Antigua.
Wow.
We've got Hackney. We've got Manchester. We've got Catford. We've got Chiswick. We've got Chicago. We've got Brooklyn. We've got Texas. We've got Leeds. We've got Birmingham, California. We've had Buckinghamshire, Johannesburg, Guyana, Leytonstone. Oh my God. The Big W, Walthamstow, Derby, Peckham. Professor Gus, it goes on and on and on, big brother. Your words have gone all over the earth, King. And brother, you've given us direction. You're giving us, California, we've got Los Angeles. We've got Leicester, New Jersey. Brother, Professor Gus, as I said, I don't care if I embarrass you, brother. I love you. We love you, brother. And you're a prime example of what it means to be a revolutionary grassroots activist.
We're just out in sunny Portugal. I'm wanting to say, Guan Papa G.
Oh, wow. Lady Adele, what did you want to say?
So I'm so glad you talked at that amount of time, Brother Andrew, because I've been trying to get hold of all the books. Gus, the only one I cannot get hold of is the Emancipate Yourself, Choose Life. How can we get hold of that book?
It should be on the New Beacon Books website online.
Right.
There's loads of them. I mean, they are at New Beacon, and they sell them online.
Brilliant. So family, looking out for that book. You can't go on Amazon. It's not on there at the moment. So we're going to move to a New Beacon Books, which is our bookshop, if we want to get all of the books by Professor Gus. And definitely if you want to get Emancipate Yourself, Choose Life. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, this was Professor Gus. As you see there, Professor Gus, it looks like I've kidnapped you there, brother. I don't know, the look on your face, brother. I hope I wasn't scaring you in that picture, brother. But you look
that's perfectly normal. That face. In fact, it looks a bit more relaxed than normal, actually. The one thing that you don't get too often is a show of teeth.
Woo! Brothers and sisters, don't forget the books. Sister, as you say, Emancipate Yourself, Choose Life, Murder in the Playground. Get these books tonight. The Case for a Learner's Charters for Schools, and Taking a Stand, all by Professor Gus. Brothers and sisters, make some noise for Lady Ma'at. That was such a phenomenal conversation. Professor Gus, I salute you, the way you answered the questions, the way you went into depth. But you didn't give a long lecture. You went so deep, and yet you were mindful of the time, brother. As I say, you are an example to every single one of us who want to be a defender of freedom, justice, and equality.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, my big brother. Brothers and sisters, Lady Ma'at, come on, man, show some love to Lady Ma'at. That was such a beautiful, in-depth conversation. Let's not forget that Professor Gus mentioned about the history, about working with Black parents. Brothers and sisters, that's why it's so important that we have Professor Gus on this platform to remind us of what we're doing. We are working behind the scenes, brother, Professor Gus, and to the Hidden Truth platform. We are about to launch very soon a National Black Parents Association. We need collective voices. So that when Professor Gus speaks, we can say, Professor Gus, boom, there's 1,000, 2,000 that's backing you straight away, or 10,000 of us. You know, with people like Professor Gus, Rosemary Campbell, and various others, once they know they've got us standing beside them and they deliver a word, it's all over. Brothers and sisters, this was Brother Andrew Mohammed just on Saturday, just gone, working with Ray Lewis in Leicester, raising up our brothers and sisters in Leicester. We are creating a national voice, brothers and sisters, behind the scenes. It's not been launched yet. We are working behind the scenes, but and when this call goes out, brothers and sisters, I'm demanding, I'm going to use that word, Professor Gus, so forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm demanding that you join up. You then become an ambassador. If you're living in Ipswich, get all the brothers and sisters in Ipswich, all the parents of Black children in Ipswich to literally register with us. If you're living in Manchester, if you're living in Leeds, if you're living in Leicester, we're saying join onto this National Black Parents Association. And I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, it's with our unity we save lives and we empower each other. We want to invite people like Professor Gus to do a seminar online or in person where we bring us down in thousands, and that we don't repeat the mistake that Professor Gus has taught us about, that we get 1,000 Black parents together with Black children and it's just a talking workshop. We need to learn from what Professor Gus has taught us about tonight. So brothers and sisters, when we announce this, we're looking for you to join. And this is further evidence that this Tuesday, Nubian Tuesday, is not just a talking shop. We are seriously about changing the reality of our people. Let's not forget the Mirror Group. Oh, before I go into the Mirror Group, Sister Samira, are you there? I know your back's in pain.
I've come back. Sorry, yes, I've literally just come back to my lap.
No, we want you to rest your back, sister. Your back. But is there anything you want to say quickly about the National Black Parents Association? We've been working behind the scene for months. So.
We have. But if I may just say that we have been fed, our bellies are full tonight. It was an absolutely amazing presentation. Absolutely amazing. And it was wonderful to hear from Lady Adele together with our brother, Professor Gus. And so I just wanted to say thank you ever so much. We have been looking forward to you coming, sir.
Months.
And did not disappoint, brother. It was phenomenal. I'm sorry, my energy can't be much more amplified to do your talk justice. I'm struggling, but please know that you were phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Thank you, my sister. And thank you, Brother Andrew. Thank you, everybody. I must go and eat.
Yes. You must.
Have a good one, Professor Gus.
You've done
Take
well.
care. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But in terms of our National Black Parents Association, we have been working tirelessly. Shout out to Brother Daniel, who's on, I believe, as well as Sister Susan, Brother Leonard. There's a lot of us behind the scenes that are putting this together. It is that FUBU for us, by us. And this is not where we are going to complain about what is happening to our children. I saw a question in the chat. This is open not just to parents. Anyone who cares about our children must be a part of this. I'm not a parent, but I am a parent, because as someone who's a part of the community, what happens to anyone's child, that child is mine. And the more that we adopt the fact that if we're looking out, we come out of our doors and we see a child in need, I don't care who the mom or father is. If it takes a village to raise that child, we are that village, that child is ours. Point blank. And so we are really excited, not just excited with rah energy. We are excited that we actually are putting together something that is national, and it is for everyone. Doesn't matter if you are white, Hispanic, Asian, if your child is of mixed heritage and or Black, if your grandchild, if you're a niece, if you're a nephew, if your next door neighbor has got children, if you are a legal guardian, everyone needs to be a part of this, because every single piece is important to the building of this puzzle. Every single brick is important to the foundations of a home. And that is what we want. We don't want a house built on quicksand. We want a house with a solid foundation. And it has to have not just a national approach, but a holistic approach. And we really hope that what we are galvanizing and putting together behind the scenes, when we put this call out, that it is answered.
Thank you so much, Sister Samira. And get that back ready for us, sister. Get that back ready. Brothers, sisters, don't forget the Mirror group. If you want your websites done, if you want a professional approach online, this is the organization we need to go to. This organization we're going to be supporting. And as Brother Dr. Kev Tusa stated, it was dealt with on such a professional level. Next week, we will show you another surprise website she had done. And she's got clients all over the world. But it's so good to see a conscious Black sister who's so professional, giving back that expertise to the Black community. So brothers and sisters, we want to give a thank and a shout out to Brother Chef Kevin. Chef Kevin, salute you, my king. Yeah, Kevin gave us that key message. In the midst of darkness, can we see the stars at night? We've got to become that light over the next few months. Brothers and sisters, hail up our sister, Sister Destiny, sister, not only academically, but spiritually, psychologically, and mentally. You were a light with us today. And it's good to hear from young people speaking on your issues that you dealt us with today, sister. Thank you so much. Brothers and sisters, a big shout out to Brother Mark Mohammed, who absolutely, once again, tore the platform down. We salute you, Brother Mark Mohammed. Pure love to you, soldier. Keep up the great works. And yeah, salute to you, Brother Mark Mohammed. Brothers and sisters, don't forget, we've got our Parents and Guardians Open Night. That's right. I don't know if Sister Samira or Jamie King has put the link down. But brothers and sisters, please register. If you want to share the link, please copy and share the link. We've got an open day. And remember, we're not going to turn any child away because the parents cannot afford it. All children are welcome to join us. We want to give, as Brother Mark Mohammed said, the best of the best experiences to our young people. So brothers and sisters, again, do not ever say we're not out about changing the fabric within the Black community here in the UK. Next week, brothers and sisters, we go to Chicago. We've got our beautiful queen, Dr. Elaine Ferguson, as things fall apart, Black health, self-healing, and transformation during these uncertain times. Dr. Elaine